Well, this is the last week of the term, and so we're going to finish up with Chapter 9 today. And as I said, I believe last week or the week before, these last 3 chapters are fairly repetitive. And what they're attempting to do is to just reinforce the need for communication and respect for the family, how that benefits children, and also to be aware of our own, they're using the term perceptions, but prejudices might be a better terminology to use here to think about. So the title of this chapter is Family Engagement and Positive Goal-Oriented Relationships. And that positive and goal-oriented is really the kind of heart of this chapter, the crux of it, that when you have communication and engagement, it needs to be positive, and there should be some sort of a goal-oriented, but that doesn't mean you want something from the parents necessarily. It's just that you have an idea in mind of what it is you want to communicate clearly, I guess, it would be the way to put it. So it takes time for those kind of relationships to develop. And, you know, they develop through interactions, ongoing interactions with the family, between programs, families, teachers, you know, and they are fueled by a series of things. The first is the family's passion for their children. The second is that these kinds of goal-oriented relationships are based on mutual respect and trust. And this is a really important point. I stress this every time. Affirm and celebrate families' cultures and languages. That is just so terribly important. Plus, you get to learn a lot. You gain from learning about other cultures and languages. So it's you know, it's kind of a wonderful exchange. They also are enabled, goal-oriented relationships into when you allow for two-way communication. You just aren't the one doing the talking like I am in lectures, but you're asking questions and eliciting responses and that type of thing. And that, to do that, you have to include authentic, meaningful interactions. Being your authentic self is a very powerful way of being in the world and communicating. And people respond to that. Even if they don't speak the language well, they know when you're being real, okay? And then it often, here we go, requires an awareness of one's personal biases and how those personal biases can affect, usually negatively, if you're not aware of them, you know, mutual respect and trust. So when you have positive relationships with families, it improves the wellness and well-being of families by reducing isolation and stress. And that can only benefit the child, can only benefit the staff in the center as well, because you're all on the same team. That's the feeling that comes out of that. And so when you're all on the same team, you almost automatically support equity, inclusiveness, and cultural and linguistic responsiveness. So why do these kind of relationships matter so much? Well, first of all, they support progress for children and families. They contribute to parent-child relationships. And a key predictor of success in early childhood and healthy development is that positive, success with the parent and the child. And through positive interactions with caregivers, children develop skills for success. So in the classroom setting, the center setting, They learn, along with your support, how to manage emotions and behaviors, how to solve problems, adjust to new situations, resolve conflicts, and they learn healthy relationships with other adults, you among them, probably you foremost if you're a teacher, and with their peers. So that model is a model of healthy relationships they're learning. The parents are also learning it when they're interacting with you. And healthy relationships between parents and children develop through warm and positive interactions. This we know. You don't need a lot of research to figure that out, especially if you're a parent yourself, but just by observation you know that. But there is a lot of research regarding that. There are times when there are what your text calls disconnections. I would call them issues or problems between parents and children, misunderstandings. Some of the examples they give are a little kid is playing too loudly and the mother tells him to be quiet in a loud, angry voice. That happens all the time. It happens to all of us. It doesn't mean that there's a bad relationship between parents and children, but it does need the disconnection that causes needs to be reconnected between the parent and the child. But through that, it's okay to get, we're not all perfect all the time. Mommy's mad at me, but mommy still loves me, or daddy, whoever it is, big brother, because it gets resolved. So they're called temporary disconnections. They're natural, they're necessary, and some of the good things they do, as long as they're not extreme, obviously, or painful, is that they build resilience and conflict resolution abilities. Once again, as long as most reactions with the parents are primarily positive, this is true, then children learn important skills in that reconnecting phase after the mom's yelled at the kid or whatever. So those disconnections and challenges occur with families and with colleagues, as well as between parents and children. You might have upset parents that you have to deal with that are coming to you about something, and it may be difficult. But as your text points out, the interactions that are not perfect help us learn how to tolerate discomfort and to resolve challenges. So when you can have mostly positive relationships between parents and providers, that helps the families make progress with other goals that they may have, like improved health and safety in the family, or better financial stability, or maybe taking the risk to take on some leadership skills, something of that nature. So strong partnerships provide a sense of safety for parents to share their hopes and challenges as well. So there are staff and community partners and peers that are resources for the families, and that can help them decide their priorities and turn those goals into realities in the family. So when we focus on a family's strengths rather than their weaknesses, and when we view the parents as partners, then we can begin to work more effectively and genuinely, I would say, to support them. And kind of the payoff is that when the family stabilizes and becomes more comfortable, then they really might feel safe enough to work with the staff to resolve some problematic situations. Like maybe they want to return to school to improve their earnings, but they don't know where to begin. Or maybe they would like to join some sort of a group of either other families or whatever to be able to process some things. They'll feel safer to talk to you about that. So the next section is this whole idea of being able to recognize what families, staff, and children contribute to the whole situation. So if you're going to have positive relationships, those depend on contributions from everyone who's involved, not just the parent or not just your colleagues, but the families, the program, and the staff in the program, and the children. We may not think of children as contributing these positive contributions, but they do. So families, as you know, have their own beliefs, attitudes, perspectives that affect relationships with the staff. And it's the same for the staff and the providers. They have their own attitudes, beliefs, and values that affect their relationships with the families. So because we're aware of that families have those attitudes and perspectives, children live in those specific environments, and they're influenced by those things, by their parents, by their other, extended family, other adults and peers in that milieu. But the kids also have their own unique contributions in forms of who they are, their personality, their behavior, their temperament, their emotions, what stage of development they're in, that type of thing. Working with a 1-year-old is very different than working with a 4-year-old. Having one as a parent, having one in the household, what their contributions are, what their, level of development, that type of thing. So how do you understand and appreciate the differences? Well, one of the main things to do is to be able to be open to and to value and the perspectives and the contributions of families and staff. So to make a successful partnership. And if you view those interactions as an opportunity to learn more about each other and yourself as well as professionals, then that sets up a very positive dynamic. So the next section is titled Building and Maintaining Positive Relationships with Children. So you know how this goes if you're working in the center, and if not, if you're a parent. Or both, maybe both. So you're not really, how can I say this? You're not really like sitting down one-to-one with a child and talking to them or teaching something, but you get eye contact with them while they're playing, or you're looking at them and they turn around and see that you're paying attention to them. There is, you might, I like this example in the text. You might be observing a 2-year-old, looking at his image or her image in the mirror and the interest that they have in that. You're not directly interacting with the child, but you're observing the child. The child knows you're watching, right? And that occurs all the time in early childhood programs where people are having these subtle connections and interactions with children. And what those do is they help the children to feel more secure, more willing to explore, and to gain a stronger sense of self, because they know I'm being seen. Teacher may not be sitting right next to me right now reading to me or something, but I'm being seen. I'm not invisible. That's crucial. So teachers, as it says, who are responsive in that way can work magic. And that's a lovely thing to say, and it's so true. But what's underneath the magic is a compassionate interest in each child and careful observation, a commitment to children and families, and a thoughtful approach to teaching and learning. So how do we strengthen or how do we use strength-based attitudes and relationship-based practices? If we have strong families with strong relationships with families, it makes it easier. I've had this experience myself, and you all had it. You have to have a difficult conversation with a parent. Maybe you have to have a difficult conversation, if you're not in the profession, with a grandparent about something about the child. or the other parent, you know. If you have these strength-based attitudes and relationships already in place, then it makes it easier to have difficult conversations about uncomfortable feelings or challenging topics. So, what are those strength-based attitudes? Well, first of all, think about what an attitude is. An attitude is a way of thinking or feeling about someone or something that is often reflected in a person's behavior. If you have an attitude, your behavior is generally kind of the manifestation, the physical outward manifestation of an attitude. So here are the list of things under the strength-based attitudes. The first thing is that attitudes create a frame of mind that shapes our behavior in our personal and professional life. These are recognitions of what attitudes are. Attitudes are created by our experiences, our beliefs, and here's the key point, our assumptions. Assumptions drive me nuts. I'll tell you this as a fact. I do it too. We all do it. We make assumptions about things. We don't know if they're accurate or not. So when you find yourself just assuming something about someone or an issue or a kid or whatever, check yourself. Check those assumptions. Do what you can to find out, first of all, where are they coming from? Because if they're assumptions, they're purely coming from within you. They're not based on fact necessarily. Your assumptions may be accurate. More often they're not. And so there needs to be a checking process that goes on about that. So that's one thing, that watch out for assumptions. And then the next point about strength-based attitudes is that if we begin with positive attitudes toward families, then we see them in a more positive light. And that is a very strong foundation for partnership. Conversely, if we begin with negative attitudes, we're much more likely to see fault, to make negative judgments, and to expect a negative outcome. This is true in any situation, with parents or anybody else in any situation, okay? So, here's another recognition or acknowledgement in strength-based attitudes. One is, as an attitude, is that families are the first and most important teachers of their children. We've reiterated this all this term, okay? That families are partners with the program and the staff, and they have a critical role in their family's development. That families, this is one that's hard for teachers and people in this situation. The families have expertise about their child and their own family. It's hard when you've done a lot of schoolwork and you've got a degree and you have a lot of experience to acknowledge. Sometimes it's hard. I think it's something everyone has to work on, to acknowledge that the families are experts about their own families. Okay? They have expertise. And then the other strength-based attitude is that families can, their contributions are very important and very valuable. So there's 6 relationship-based practices that promote family engagement. There's much more detail about this in your text. I'm just going to go through the 6 with one example from each one. So the first is to observe. Now let's go through this again. These are 6 relationship-based practices that they are ones that promote family engagement. So the first one is to observe and describe the child's behavior in open communication with the family. So what you want to do when you do, and the way to do that is to share positive, genuine, and specific information about the child with the family. And here's one of the examples from the books. Quote, "You and Elizabeth are always ready when the bus arrives, and we really appreciate that." That's a lovely thing to say to a parent. And it's observing the child's behavior, and in this case as well, the parent's behavior. So number 2 is to reflect on the family's perspective. So you can better understand the child and the family if you actually really listen to the family's perspective and elicit that ability for them to communicate the family's perspective to you. And the example for this one is, quote, "I want to talk to you about Michael's progress in learning to get along with other children. I've seen a lot of changes. I wondered what you're thinking about this." And see, that opens that up for the parent's perspective to say, well, I've noticed that too. Or actually, I haven't noticed it. And you can talk about that. But you're getting them to tell them what they're seeing, what their perspective is. 3 is to support competence. And this is where we get into being teachers again, right? Sometimes, because of our training, we think we know best. And we want to show or teach families how to do things better. My adult children and my partner sometimes say, "Can you just, to me, just talk to me? Can you just stop teaching for a minute?" So I know whereof I speak on this one. So we want to show or teach families how to do things better. We need to be careful with that, to not interfere with their sense of their own competence. So here's a sample sentence communication from the text. Quote, "I noticed Christopher gave a make-believe cupcake to another little boy who was sad. It reminded me of when you brought me flowers when I was out sick. You both are so thoughtful of others." Now there's another lovely thing to say to a family member, in this case, a mother. And it does support confidence. The very fact that she thought of doing that she went and bought the flowers, that she got them to the center, that's competence. And that's an honoring of that, which is important. The 4th one is to focus on the family-child relationship. Because parents need to know that their relationship with their child is valued and supported by the program staff. So here's the sample sentence for a family member for that one. Quote, "I think Fatima knows that school is important to you. She sees you going back to school, and it makes learning so much more exciting for her because she wants to be like her mom." So I'm sure you can see how that develops a deeper relation, makes that connection between mother and child there, between parent and child, and honoring that as well. And then the 5th is valuing a family's passion. It's important to, and remember, passion in the terminology of this text and learning is about emotion. You can almost use those two things interchangeably. So value a family's passion. It's important to understand parents' emotions, both positive and negative. And they're passionate, those emotions reflect their passionate concern for their child and their family. Sample sentence. Quote, "I can see that you're upset that the bus was late this morning, and you've told us that it's important to you that Madeline gets to school on time so that you can get to your class on time." I would have added, "I'm sorry" there. We're sorry, but that's not in that sentence. All right, and then the 6th one is what we talked about at the beginning. Reflect on your own perspective. So it's really important to know and consider your own view when you're working with families. Because the reality is, of course, we all do this. We bring our own beliefs, our own values into everything that we do. So the first thing you have to do is know what they are, be aware of your own values and beliefs. And then rather than putting them aside, you can increase your awareness of them by saying, I'm so, and not, you're not going to say this to Rebecca's family, by the way, this sentence. You may say it to a staff. You may say it to yourself. And a key point here is it sounds like complaining, but that isn't the purpose of it. The purpose is to verbalize what you're feeling. Get it out in a safe way, in a safe place, so that you can. Now I understand why I'm kind of feeling the way I'm feeling about that family. So here's the sample sentence. I'm so frustrated with Rebecca's family. They tell me all the time they're going to follow through on the referrals I give them, and then they always have excuses. It feels like a waste of time to be working with them on this. I don't understand what they want from me. And I can remember feeling that way many times working in Head Start. And I wish I had known then to verbalize that, to say it out loud, maybe to say it out loud to someone else, maybe to get some feedback on, you know, someone doing active listening with me. I hear you saying that, that would help unpack all of that. But remember, this is not what you're saying to the parents. It's what you're doing is clarifying your own feelings and your own emotions. So it's really important. I can't reiterate it enough to make time to reflect on your own perspectives, how it's affecting your work and attitudes toward families, and to identify what common perspectives you can with families, and then work on those. And once you've built that relationship based on common perspectives, you can begin to work together to understand the differences in perspectives between you. Well, that is it for this term and this course, and thank you for being with me.